Greetings and salutations, fellow book readers. This is Mark, and the book I will review today is The Woman in the Dunes. Before we continue, this is personalized limited edition of The Woman in the Dunes with leather cover designed and made by me. At the end of the video, I will tell you a couple of ways of how you can get one for yourself if you are interested. Now let's get back to the review. The Woman in the Dunes, or Suna na Ona in Japanese, which literally means Sand Woman, is a 1962 novel written by Kobo Abe. Abe, the writer, is considered by many to be kind of a Japanese Kafka, probably because of the surreal, dark and dreamy protagonists portrayed in his novels and their somewhat useless struggle against life. He grew up in Manchuria in the 1930s when it was brutally occupied by the Empire of Japan, and this grim and violent experience had a profound impact on his view of the world and made him realize meaninglessness of the individual human life. For me personally, Kobo Abe is the best Japanese writer post-World War II generations have produced, and probably was a strong candidate for Nobel, but his death at a relatively young age must have hindered it. What is The Woman in the Dunes about? It is about our resignation to the power of the survival instinct and also individual relativity of circumstances. If we cannot change them, we accept them. We want the best possible condition for ourselves, but in the end we will take whatever is given, if it lets us continue our existence. Suddenly, a sorrow, the color of dawn, welled up in him. They might as well lick each other's wounds, but they would lick forever, and the wounds would never heal, and in the end their tongues would be worn away. Further, there is time presented as life's absolute truth, and life itself shown as inescapable, Sisyphus-like, a bit stoic struggle whose end is predetermined. Basically, if the struggle stops, so does our life, but the time continues unaffected into infinity. The only way to go beyond work is through work. It is not that work itself is valuable. We surmount work by work. The real value of work lies in the strength of self-denial. Now, a bit of the plot. A man goes to the beach for a few days to enjoy his hobby of collecting insects, and he spends all day in the dunes, searching and reflecting on the properties of sand. In the evening, he is taken by an old villager into a hut at the bottom of a sand pit to spend the night. The hut is inhabited by a young woman who dedicates her nights to removing sand, which he finds somewhat ridiculous and useless. In the morning, he wakes up before the woman and decides to get going. But once outside, he discovers that the rope ladder he used to climb down into the pit is gone, and he is not able to leave. A few days pass, during which the man helps the woman to remove the sand. He tries to understand what is happening to him and prepares a plan of escape. When it fails, he decides, as a form of protest, to stop to shovel the sand, but his action creates the reaction in the villagers to stop supplying him and the woman with water. So, forced by the survival instinct, he temporarily gives up his resistance and returns to work. Eventually, he again becomes tired of the uselessness of his burden and tries another escape. But when it doesn't go as he planned it, and additionally, the growing feeling of impotence over his own fate forces him to accept some painful truths about the general condition of human life. He decides to dedicate his energy to more impending tasks crucial to his survival, and also starts to reflect on the implications his current situation will have on his future. And that's the basic plot. Now, what are my thoughts about The Woman in the Dunes? This is one of these stories that leaves a lot of space for interpretation. The novel is about the struggle between two protagonists, the man and the sand, But on a large scale, it is man versus time, and sand is a tool or a weapon of time, and its physical reflection. It is also a story of humanity and its instinct of survival when dealing with nature and life. To make its point, the book tries to create a feeling of claustrophobia, of being enclosed in something without a way out, being physically stuck in a sandpit and, comparably, being psychologically stuck in life. Only a shipwrecked person who has just escaped drowning could understand the psychology of someone who breaks out in laughter just because he is able to breathe. The protagonist works as a schoolteacher, but he is ambitious and spends his free time searching for a new insect species, which he fantasizes would be named after him, thus etching his name into eternity and symbolically making him immortal. And this might seem somewhat of a victory over time. He is also a bit arrogant, and being a city dweller, he belittles and undervalues the villagers. And that, together with his ambitious nature, is his undoing. Underestimating others and overestimating ourselves is a common cause of many human tragedies. Abe seems to be portraying the man as the modern-day Sisyphus punished to do repetitive work that has no visible progress, and the only hope for it to end is death, which is shown, just like our lives, to be mostly out of our control. The woman, who remains unnamed, but after whom the book is titled, is somewhat a secondary character, but essential to the moral of the story. She is there to make the struggle less painful, and the new condition the man found himself in easier to accept. She is also somewhat of an incidental guide in the practical and theoretical sense, directing him in his manual effort, and she is a bit of a philosophical contrast and challenges his views on life. The man is stronger than her physically, as shown in their bodily combat, but she is stronger overall, and because of it her silent will prevails. The Woman in the Dunes story is an original twist on survival at sea. In the old days, many crew members were simply kidnapped, and once on board they had little choice but to maintain the ship afloat for their own survival. And the water and food were scarce and used as reward for doing the work. The sand in the novel can be compared to the seawater, and the dunes to the ocean waves, constantly moving and changing shape. And as in the middle of the ocean, there is scarcity of fresh water, and men are in a constant fight to survive, trying to stay above the sand. Further, in the novel, sand represents time, absolute, unstoppable, and indifferent to its surroundings. Each grain of sand individually is insignificant, but as a part of the whole it is unstoppable and undefeatable. It sticks, piles up, and enters everywhere. Sand, which didn't even have a form of its own, yet not a single thing could stand against this shapeless, destructive power. The very fact that it had no form was doubtless the highest manifestation of its strength, was it not? And so is time. Each fraction seemingly unimportant, but looking from the perspective of months or years, it is responsible for everything because it never stops. And this constant progress and evolution motivates us to act. And man can control neither, but only adapt to the movement of sand and flow of time. In our lives, we struggle against the time in the same way the protagonists of the novel struggle against the sand. In the book, Abe asks, "Do you shovel to survive or survive to shovel?" Which is a twist on the "Do you work to live or live to work?" And Abe's answer seems to be that it is not important as long as you continue your struggle. It is about doing small individual circles inside the big circle of one's life. And the life circles are inside larger circle, and so on for the show to go on. Because the struggle is not only for the individual's own sake, but for the survival of the society. and the society takes precedence. The woman has accepted her destiny because she realized there is no escape, or the only escape is death, and her survival instinct will not let her die voluntarily. But the man, who is new at it, needs to be forcefully convinced and trained to accept that he needs to move sand. And to accomplish this, the villagers exchange water for labor. So he either works and has water to drink, or he doesn't work and dies of thirst. But the water is not the motivator, just the means to continue. And the real motivator is survival. The man in the dunes above all wants to live, and this is confirmed to him when he's stuck in the quicksand and all he can think about is surviving and living under any circumstances. He cries and begs for help and promises to do anything in exchange for it. So the human need for continuation of one's existence makes the decision for him, and there is no more question whether he will do it, but occasionally why he's doing it. But even the why only relates to the level of suffering he experiences while doing his task and is temporary. The man in the dunes goes through different psychological stages when one discovers that there is no control of one's destiny. They are denial, anger, bargain, depression, and acceptance. And the final lesson is one can only adapt to the circumstances. After the first night of shoveling the sand, the man asked, "Is it like this every night?" And the woman replied, "The sand never stops, so we only exist to move sand. And once we adapt to it, it is difficult to go back, since men prefer safety of the routine over excitement of change, and in the end it is only exchanging one routine for another." The man eventually discovers he doesn't need to depend on the villagers for the fresh water, but he already affirmed to himself that there is no escape. So the discovery changes its meaning for him because he changed how he sees life, or more importantly, accepted what life is, a never-ending, meaningless struggle to let the time pass. Work seemed something fundamental for man, something which enabled him to endure the aimless flight of time. The grains of sand can also be seen as a metaphor for life's problems or challenges. Individually, they don't have a large impact on us, but if we don't solve them and let them pile up, eventually they will overwhelm and bury us. In the book, it is the grains of sand which are responsible for all the physical, psychological, and emotional suffering, just as problems are in our own lives. To sum it up, the book is an existential and nihilistic view of life. I would call it nihilistic existentialism. It presents life as an unwinnable battle inside the pit of sand. We struggle, we suffer, and then we die. The fundamental purpose of all human effort is to delay death, since death is inevitable. But in all of that macabre contest, man is given a bit of a free will and a limited power to choose, die now or die later. But even this is handicapped by our survival instinct. Well, on the somewhat positive side, sometimes we can choose the form of our struggle, and occasionally it might even feel pleasurable. But that's as much control or say as we can expect from life. The woman in the dunes, because of Abe's rather dark and bleak view of life, will probably appeal more to the people with somewhat of nihilistic nature. But even if you don't see the world as all doom and gloom, and don't connect with the concept of life as a constant struggle, you might still enjoy the story, which is beautifully told, and Abe is able to create with words splendid visual pictures and cause broad emotional reactions in the reader. I have to give credit to the Japanese for being able to make almost anything sound and look beautiful. Since Abe was labeled Japanese Kafka, it is only fair to find similar work in one of Kafka's novels, and probably the closest one is Metamorphosis, but there are many other works by different writers that deal with the same subject as The Woman in the Dunes, life as repetitive and somewhat meaningless struggle, and its relationship with the will to survive. If you would like some visual references to your reading, there is a great Japanese adaptation of this work into the cinema. The film was made only a couple of years after the publication of the novel, with collaboration from Abe, and because of it, it seems to have this period and style integrity, and it is well worth seeing. Okay, let's talk about the physical book. The book I am holding is a paperback which I transformed into a hardcover leather-bound edition. To make the cover, I use grade A naturally tan hide I buy from a tannery in North Spain. It is the same leather Louis Vuitton uses to make his bags, so it is top quality. I do all the processing of the leather myself. First, I designed the cover, and what I did here, I used the stencil from the Woman in the Dunes movie poster and placed it over sand dunes background, and also added the title in Japanese as well as English. This is the bag with the blurb, and inside front cover I printed a quote from the book. If you want to see a more detailed video where I explain how I transform paperback into leather hardcover, click on the link in the description. I will make a maximum of 100 editions of each title. Each one will be numbered and initialed, and the numbers will go in chronological order from 2 up, since number 1 stays with me. The price will be around $100, so if you would like me to make one for you, you can click below on my email and send me a message. I do not guarantee I will do it, since it will depend on the time I have available, access to leather, and if I can get my hands on the copy of the book. Now, if you're not willing to spend the $100 but you still want the book, what you can do is click below on the PayPal link and donate $3 or more to my channel, and for every 100 donations I will make a lottery and draw one name, and the winner will receive the book. So if you are cheap but feel lucky, this might be the way to do it. Also, your donations give me the extra motivation to make the book reviews, and I appreciate them very much, so thank you in advance. One more thing, when you make your donation, remember to include the title of the book you would like to win. The book itself is beautiful. Visually, it has a very nice texture, it smells great, and the more you handle it, the more beautiful it will become. And it makes a great gift for yourself or somebody who appreciates books. So if you want one, don't snooze or you might lose. Well, that's it, so let's end it here, and until next time, keep your ear close to the ground and read a book. Adios.